So guys, I'm doing a video series on the Japanese anime noir, and this is also a bit of a tough video, and I do want to talk about what I consider the happiest day of my life. And what happened was that, I really love the Japanese anime noir. I really resonated with the character Yumura Kirika because, when I was in high school, I was adopted out of an abusive situation as a very, very young child, and I didn't know who my biological father and mother was. So I had like stories in my head of, fantasies of, what my biological parents would be like. And I also in my depression, loneliness, and creative imagination, I developed in my brain a very like a fantasy of what my biological parents were. And definitely, when I watched the anime noir, I kind of had like this, fantasy of what if my parents were expert assassins and I was like a sleeper soldier or something like that, really. Like sometimes when you're really depressed and you're really creative in your brain, you kind of just, it's like you're very delusional, but it's like, a fantasy or a pipe dream. So when I watched the anime, I connected with Kirika on many levels. And as I said, I kind of connected with the no origin. The other thing was that we were both very book smart. Um, like I worked extremely hard, and I honestly felt like, just by listening to like powerful music or emotional music, my body almost had like, just like, how Goku goes Super Saiyan off of anger. I kind of go Super Saiyan or go into super work mode or super hard work mode just by listening to very emotional music like Yuki Kajora um or the music Megumi Hayashibara, so it was almost like, when I watched anime, like it just felt like my soul was on fire. It felt like I had like a charge of energy. And also when I watched Noir for the first time, like one of the scenes that I remember was watching Kirika in the first episode, kill somebody. Like she grabs his necktie, she does like a flip and goes through a beam. So like the guy's being dragged with her, and then he hangs the guy. And I remember like hearing Salvanos, and honestly, I got goosebumps, and I felt it was like an outer body experience. Like I felt so energized. And when she said the lines, if killing is something that I can do easily, why don't I feel sorry for what I done? I was like, wow, this character really resonates with me because, I'm hurting on the inside. I've done good and bad things. I don't know why I do it. I feel like remorse for the person that I am. So I really resonate with Kirika, but also what I saw in her was a lonely person or a very frail and sad person. And like, possibly my fantasies, maybe like maybe like something that somebody that I would love to have as a girlfriend and a wife, really, because like a waifu, because I kind of resonated because I always think like the woman that I'm really attracted to in my life is always somebody who is, has gone through a very hard past and perseveres over it, but almost like through that hard past, acknowledges that the world is dark. Like I'm more like kind of attracted to that type of person who's kind of persevered over darkness. Like I've had a friend, Anna, that I met, in college, and definitely she told me like she went through, parents that had a divorce, and then that they told her after the divorce, we were just together because of you until he turned 18. She had to raise her mother. She had to move out of her mother out of a place where her mother got assaulted one time, so she moved out to another place. She mentioned that she was sexually assaulted as a teenager, and she kind of grew up the mentality of people really don't. It just doesn't, like, whatever happens to her really doesn't matter and stuff like that. So I fell in love with her because she's just like me. She had a very rough childhood and overcame a lot of rough things, and feels like people don't really acknowledge or are sensitive to her feelings. And that's kind of why I fell in love with my friend Anna. And that's almost like how I fell in love with the character Kirika, because she's almost very similar in that ideology of a human being. She's a metaphor for human beings in a way that, have rough origins, go through emotional abuse, don't have a backstory, don't have an identity, and have like this superhuman potential, and also just, in a world that just wants to destroy her and whatever, really. And now you grow up like me, who I'm mixed raced, I'm half white. I'm 25% black and I'm 25% Native American, but I grew up in a white community where I was a black man and I grew up with ignorant parents, and I'm sorry to say that, who just want me to be their black son, really. I was the like local black kid in every neighborhood and associated with negative stereotypes. So Kirka resonated with me for, a lot of things, So the happiest day of my life was really that, I want to go to a museum. There was like a shop in New London called Sarge's Comics. And what happened was that it was on a Wednesday. So what happened was that if you had Comcast Xfinity, what happened was that they would have like Anime News Network on it in the early 2000s, like around 2005, 2006. So you would see like, 3 or 4 episodes of a Japanese anime, and then they don't show you the rest of it because they want you to buy the series, really. So I remember they had Noir on that, and I saw like episode one, episode two, and then episode three, and I was so like fucking hooked on it. I was like, wow, this is like the best anime I've ever seen. Well, I really resonate with Kirika. When she cries, it just hits my fucking soul so hard. I feel like, there's this energy or this like outer body type of, energy that I'm getting from it. Like it's almost like, it's like photosynthesis for my soul, really. Or like you feel like a lot of like tension and lightness in your chest. You almost like, go from no energy to like superhuman energy. Like I remember like the first time I heard Yuki Kajiura Salvanos, I remember the next day the song stuck in my head and I ran like, almost 10 miles, really, because it was just like it was just like, being supercharged, like a supercharged battery, really. So I remember like saying to myself, like, no matter what, shoot me dead, I will get that. I will go to Stardust Comics and I will get the Noir anime series. Shoot me dead if you stop me. You have to shoot me dead to stop me from doing that. So I remember like that day in my house, I was like saying to myself in my head, really, I'm gonna do anything to make the day go by faster. So what I did was that, I watched Noir anime series. I had to walk, 6 miles to work at Bishop's Orchards. I worked there for a couple of hours, and what happened was that my younger brother had a babysitter. So what my dad told me was, yeah, Byron, you have to walk 6 miles back home, and I don't care if it's nighttime, really, or whatever happens to you, because we don't have a car seat. So you have to walk all the way back home, really. And what happened was that one of my friends picked me up, but I did tell my little brother's babysitter, oh, well, my dad didn't want you to give me a ride because you guys don't have a car seat. And then my dad was like, lying and saying, oh, well, I knew Byron's going to find somebody. He just wanted to kind of cover himself for making a 16-year-old with mental health issues walk 12 miles in a day and not really accommodate his needs. Like I was definitely raised in that type of household where it's like, fuck the kid, really. Like if you like, I remember like as I told the story in one of my other episodes of my Tough series, where my dad would make me walk into town to get a jug of milk and to get a gallon of milk, and he would be like, drinking and like, just gulping it and being like, and please go get it. And that stopped because people were complaining. Like I remember it was over 100 degrees one time, and he wanted me to do that, and some people were like, dude, that's just not right, really. You can easily pick up a jug of milk with a car, but you're actually making your son walk 12 miles just to get it, and all that stuff. That's not child abuse, but that's definitely a very, very bad parenting choice. But also too, when you say something like, oh, well, it's sunset, I'm gonna be walking in darkness, I'm a minor and you want me to walk all the way home, and you want me to walk all the way home, and all that stuff. So I remember like, I was like, I remember like, after I worked my shift, I was kind of like, very dehydrated, and I was also taking antidepressants. And when I'm depressed, I actually have a lot of like visions or daydreams, and I imagined like walking down Long Hill Road, the sky becoming red, all like the apple tree vineyards, all like the apples and the vineyards itself turning into like these giant African warriors, and not just African warriors. They just turned to the skeletons of African warriors, and their eyeballs were glowing red. And then what happened was, in the middle of the sky, I saw like a giant cross. I saw like Kirika naked on it, and she had a crown of thorns and all that. And like I said, I was abusing. I mean, I was taking antidepressants, and I was also very dehydrated. And I was also like, I had a very creative mind. I seen Pink Floyd The Wall and other things like that. So obviously, it was like a hallucination, but it was almost like what they say in Carl Jung's psychology, and in the psychology of Carl Jung, we all think in metaphors. That I felt like maybe in that metaphor, the sky becoming red, that represents the anger and the sadness and the turmoil that I felt, because, I was trying to deal with a bunch of traumas at the time. The trauma of finding out that my mother was abusive and neglectful to me, apathy from my parents about it. I was bullied a lot in middle school. In high school, I was like the local black kid, so that's what the red is from. The African warriors turning the skeletons. It's two things that maybe it kind of comes from maybe me liking darker images or disturbing images. And I also feel that I'm not part Native American, so like definitely bones are what you see on a lot of warriors or in a lot of cultures, really. So maybe like the idea of like a warrior, and maybe like I saw Kirk on the cross, and that kind of represents a couple of things. That probably represents that she's like an ideal person to me. Like they say like there's the Madonna horror complex, and there are people who sometimes they don't have a person in real life, so they dip into like fantasy or all that stuff. Like there is a waifu culture. There's like you see all these people who want to identify as animals or other things like that. You may start a culture where people actually marry fictional characters, but that's what I was like seeing in my visions and all that. But again, at 37 years old, this being 20 years ago, I understand that I was going through a lot, and I did not have a very healthy lifestyle, but I also did not have a really healthy brain, stuff like that. Like I think, like as I said, I had bits of schizophrenia and other things like that. But my friend drove me home, and what happened was that I took like a lot of Risperdal pills. I overdosed on it, and I just completely like blacked out until the following morning when nobody was around. Really, my parents left for work. Everybody just thought that I was just tired from. I was just kind of tired from my job, but no, I just abused Risperdal, took like 4 or 5 pills, and I was like saying, what, if I take one more, I know it's going to kill me, but I like the feeling of taking all these pills, really, because it makes me feel like I'm dead. Because my parents, because I know like I misbehaved in school, and I've also told that story too, where I got a psychiatric evaluation. I was asked questions like, if you listen to a song, do you think it was made for you? And I remember like the guy who gave me the psychological evaluation, he said that it's 50-50. I could either have mental illness, or I could have severe depression, and maybe the next step is for me to talk to a psychiatrist to deal with depression. And then my dad came in, and he said like Byron washes his hands too much, and this morning he was like playing with like the burner, because what I would do is pour like water on the burner and watch it sizzle, and that's not necessarily an autistic thing. That's just necessarily just me screwing around. I remember like my little brother saw me do it. He wanted me to do that just to entertain him, but he told my dad just to kind of get me in trouble. But I should have not done that in the first place. But I remember like when that happened, my dad elbowed me in the shoulder, and he said like, "Dad's looking out for you. You have a mental illness." Because my dad has always been that type of person that he wants me to accept two things: that I'm a black man, and I'm a black man with autism or another form of mental illness. But like I've said, you grow up in a household being raised by two gay white men who are emotionally abusive, who definitely triggered my low self-esteem, want me to identify as a black man when I'm not black, I'm mixed-raced, are ignorant of my trauma, are ignorant of, the story that told me about my biological mother being abusive and neglectful, and the types of abuse and neglect that I suffered from, and other things like that, and really hammering down like no matter what I do or any bad behavior, it's autism instead of just me reacting off of trauma, which it is. So like I've said before, who would not have a mental illness, being raised the way that I was raised and my older brother was raised. So Yeah, it was definitely like, why I that's how I got put on medication really. But then that's kind of why I resonated with a character like Hirika, because I felt nobody loved me and nobody really cared about me, and I felt like an object and a piece of property really. So when I went to Sarge's Comics, so that was like the happiest day of my life almost, because I was like, it was me just waiting for that next day really, and just like that imagination, that fantasy saying, yes, I'm gonna get that anime. It's gonna mean a hell of a lot to me. It's gonna be a powerful, powerful thing. And when I look back at it, it's exactly everything I'm telling you. It was ultimately, what my issue was, that sometimes when I was really depressed and I was younger, I would have a very schizophrenic and dangerous mindset. You should not be abusing antidepressants to make time go by quicker. um yes, when there are situations like, what, you feel like your parents are not respecting your needs, and you got to voice that. And then also too, that sometimes, as I said, life is not fair. It doesn't mean that my parents don't care about me. It's that, what, they just depend on me to be independent. And also, as I said, like, as my therapist told me, sometimes parents are ignorant and they don't know what's best for their child. Or sometimes, you have to always behave yourself and do what's best for you. Like, to any children that has mental health issues or behavioral issues, the number one thing that I will always tell you is that you need to behave yourself, because that way you are allowed to make choices for yourself. If you're going through a hard time and you make bad choices, then that's when people put you on medication and try to control you. And sometimes, they create more problems. Or like, I work in a psych ward. So a lot of times you have a child and all that they're doing is drugging the kid to put them on the right medication. So you may have one week where they're just crazy and out of control because they put them on meds. They put them on another med, they're worse. And you put another med, they're sort of mellow, but they're bad. And then the fifth week, you put them on another thing, then they're fine, really. Like, you're ultimately play, human science experiments. And then you also have some parents who are ignorant, who are like, okay, my kid was great because of medication. Well, my kid was great because of medication. And when you do that, you hurt your kid, because you're almost like saying, hey, it's not because you're actually are a person that's persevered over your problem. You're just a kid with a mental illness. Don't become like my parents, where it's always like, the billboard of you is your mental illness. And if you have a child, the billboard cannot be. If you have a child, don't ever treat your kid like a billboard. You should never talk about their race. You should never talk about, their mental illness, and that be about it, really. Look what I did. Like, honestly, I'm somebody that took medication, really. And I remember, like, having lower self-esteem because of it, because I felt like, now I was getting A+s in chemistry class in high school. Now my dad gives a shit. Now my dad's congratulating me because he put me on medication and intimidated me to go on medication. But yeah, it just matters. Only matters when my dad puts me on medication. And then the other part of it is that I think I remember my dad kind of like, almost like doing one of those things you see a lot of parents do when they put the kids on meds, like that type of, I'm happy there's medication to control my son, really. But I had a lot of suicidal thoughts and a lot of just depression and voices in my head and other side effects, and I couldn't talk to my parents about it. So, when I tell you guys about behaving yourself, it's important, because sometimes it doesn't matter what you go through. You got to be in control of yourself, or else you get put on medication, and some of the time the medication can be dangerous. Or you may have parents that may prop up the medication and be like, okay, you were never anything until I drugged you, and I want credit for drugging you. The other thing that I would say is that all those fantasies and stuff like that, yes, that's just how my brain works. But I know how to differentiate fantasy and reality. If I have a creative pipe dream, I just know that, hey, that's just what it is, really. And I think the other thing I would say is my relationship with Kirika. I understand she's a fictional character. She is a concept. Every character is a metaphor for something, and for an idea in real life. And Kirika is a very thematic character. She resonates to, as I said, people with depression, people with identity issues, people who've gone through hard past, people who feel, targeted, and other things like that. She resonates with a lot of characters. And I believe Ryohei Sukimura, who wrote the script of Noir, he based Kirika on his own depression. Like, she's ultimately an allegory for his depression and all that. But so, Kirika, she means a lot to me as a character, but she's not like a wife or a goddess in my head. At one point, yes, she was, but there are other anime characters like that too. But as I said, I've grown out of it because I understand that that's just not a healthy mindset. But Noir is an anime that I like revisiting. It gave me the happiest day of my life when I was drugging myself to go to speed up time to actually watch it. But definitely, there are more happier days in my life as time's gone on. You know, when I took the Southwest Chief and I was seeing the New Mexico desert and the Arizona desert. When I took a train to when I flew to Adak Island, the most western point, that was one of the happiest days of my life. Those are like the happiest. When I shook the hand of Dustin Rhodes by traveling to Texas, when I crossed into Wyoming, my 50th state. This morning, when I realized that I achieved my goal working 12,000 hours at the hospital, like these accomplishments, those are better, way better, happier days than me just drugging myself and doing something extremely dangerous with my health um, and my mental health, back when I was like 16, 17 years old. So, and people did love and care about me, but I just think that's, as I said, you got to know how to manage yourself because sometimes parents just don't know how to help you, and sometimes, the medication and other things end up hurting you a lot more, really. But that's how Noir gave me the happiest day of my life. And I also want to mention as an epilogue, it was crazy what happened because when I went to Sarge's Comics, they didn't have the Noir anime DVD. What happened was that they had a computer downstairs where they would burn episodes of television, like they would burn like a TV series and put it on a DVD. Completely illegal, but that's just what they did at that shop, really. And I remember, I'm not sure how much I paid for it, but it was like $60, $70. So everything was overpriced there. But the thing was that when I got it, I was only able to watch up to like episode, I think 22 or 23 or something like that, because it kind of, the DVD kind of like messed up after that. So I remember waiting like a few years until I actually knew the ending of Noir, really. So it really bummed me out. But I actually like remember reading like articles, and I remember like there was this article in French about like a spoiler about what happens in the last episode in French. My teacher actually read it to me because he spoke French, really. So yeah, but it was actually a good ending for me because the ending of Noir. I hate watching the last episode. It is so emotional and it's so painful. It is so sad and so painful to me. Because it's an ending of a story and a character's journey and a character's acceptance. It hurts my heart. Like one of the things that get to me emotionally is the ending of Noir. So I think I was like happy in a way that I didn't watch the ending until years and years later because it itself was very, very, very powerful to me. And I also like say because I almost was happy that I saw the ending a little bit later because I was more mature, because I knew I probably would have killed myself if I watched the ending when I was that young, really. But it was good that way a year or two before I saw the actual ending of Noir, because it was a lot emotionally. But I will also tell you guys, like an anime or a story can be very powerful to you. It can resonate a lot with your life. It can make you feel like, hey, this character is actually true to what I've experienced. Hey, in Japan, depression, low self-esteem, feeling like you're a loser because of society's expectations, that's probably how Ryo Sugimura felt. If people don't know who he is, he wrote the script for the anime Noir. He used to drink a lot. He lived in cars. He had depression, and that's when he came up with the idea of Noir. So I can imagine like Kirika is about his feelings about not wanting to be alive, because the last part of it is totally part 3 of Noir is really about Kirika and her inner turmoil. I really think that comes from Ryo Sugimura's life. So just like the main character in Evangelion, Shinji, if I'm saying his name correctly, he's a metaphor for the depression of Hideaki Anno. So yeah, so that's why she resonates. But ultimately, if there's a character that resonates with you, It's because it's a powerful metaphor. That's why characters are so powerful and they last the test of time, really. But definitely when you cross into the schizophrenic realm of, okay, well, this character is like a goddess or a messiah or a waifu, or I'm gonna hurt myself, like drug myself, because the following day I'm gonna actually get my paycheck and then buy this DVD, or I'm gonna drug myself until for a day or two, and then when I actually, just because I'm waiting for my Amazon order, don't ever do that shit. But yeah, that's just what I have to say. I think it's a powerful story. I wrote an essay about that in college, and I remember like my professor didn't like that for two reasons. Number one, he thought that I was a crazy man for writing it, and he was like, he always said like sometimes I write like crazy son of a bitch, not professional, and also I'm mixed race, but he sees me as a black man, so he wanted me to write about my blackness and being proud of being black. So a psychological drama about a person drugging himself and being in a state of delusion because they're going through a lot of anxiety and depression and heavy emotions and not knowing how to manage it in a creative imagination. He didn't want to hear that really, or maybe say, okay, maybe if this is all true, maybe you should talk to a therapist. But yeah, I'm happy to share the story with you because people are more open about their mental health and other things like that. But as I said, I got out of it. And I'm also happy that I watched the ending of Noir and the ending where Kirika and Mariel make peace with their lives. And that's just the end of their journey, really. It's not a happy ending in the sense that you don't really see it's not that they go on to live happy lives. They can just continue their lives as assassins and a prophet. And you almost want to see more of that. You want to see like what does happen. Do they retire and live happy lives? Can you just make a happy ending? You don't get that. So, and also the ending too, you see the locket and you hear the guns, you're like, oh fuck, we got an ambiguous ending. But yeah, I may never review the last episode of Noir because it probably brings back all those feelings and all those emotions. I hate the ending so much. It's so fucking painful for me. Um, so if I ever reviewed for you guys, I may just go off your memory because it may just be too hard for me to watch. So like there's some people who like professional wrestling, they will not watch like the Chris Benoit matches or his WrestleMania victory because sometimes you can't watch something if it triggers so many powerful emotions. But to me, this is what Noir that's the happiest day of my life, with Noir. It was, me just abusing medication to make time go by faster and feeling like because I couldn't resonate with people in real life, I could resonate with a fictional character. But yes, it's okay to resonate with fictional characters, but it's never going to harm yourself in that way. And if you are delusional about it, you have to fix your own delusions or talk to a therapist that you trust, really. Or, like I said, you have to fix it yourself because there are plenty of therapists that will say, okay, you can't be watching this because it's bad for you. And, or they may put you on more medication, or they may just not get where you come from, not get that, okay, maybe this is a kid who's really lonely and needs a lot of help and a lot of just sensitivity and understanding, which is what I needed. And then I was also lucky because the last thing that I'll say is my dad didn't want me watching Noir. He actually said he was going to actually watch a couple of episodes because he said, like, you know what, because I'm autistic. I'm not autistic. I was misdiagnosed. But at that time, he thought that I was autistic. So he was like saying, oh, well, you're autistic. You know what? I'm concerned that it's too violent for you. But thankfully, he didn't do that because, again, I was like 17. I've seen so much domestic violence in my house. My parents forced us to spend an hour watching news every single day. So we were hearing about rapings and killings and other violent shit, really. But you have problems with me watching an anime where people get shot, but, oh, well, nobody really dies, really, or other things like that. So, I was happy he didn't, take that away from me. But that's my, journey with Noir, really, the happiest day of my life. And there's been other happy days, like I've said before, so it's a powerful anime. It's going to be like that for the rest of my life, but I'm happy that I don't have Kirika as a religious figure or a waifu because, like I said, that runs into, in my opinion, schizophrenia and just a very dangerous thinking. But I think that, for anybody who has a character that resonates with them, resonate with them and like that character in healthy and constructive ways.